angry as individuals, what are the most impactful changes we can make in our day-to-day lives as households?
As you can tell, I'm a great admirer of Greta Thunberg. And when Greta Thunberg gets asked that question, which she gets asked a lot at meetings, she says, you know the answer to that question even as you ask it. Because whatever your current circumstances might be, wherever you are, you've heard on so many different occasions ways in which you could do the little things. And she refuses to go into all of those lifestyle choices. She doesn't say at that point, and you need to do some more recycling, and you need to think about your energy consumption, and you need to turn off the lights, and you need to eat less meat. She says, I'm not going to give you a to-do list of ways in which you can make your own lifestyle less hostile to the climate and more friendly to the natural world, because deep down, you kind of know what all the answers to that look like. You have got to devote yourself to finding out what that looks like and then acting on it. Now, if that isn't enough, oh my God, in comparison to 30 years ago, when it was really quite difficult to find some basic advice as to what you need to do around all of these different things, the world now is awash with sources of really brilliant information. Online, mostly, where you will find all the guidance, any individual will find all the guidance that he or she needs to begin on this journey. The thing that Greta goes on to say is, don't try and do everything on your own. Work together with other people. So if you've got community organizations in the place where you live, we're pointing, I think, here to Transition Cleeve or whatever else it might be, use the knowledge and the wisdom and experience of these organizations, because they've been working on this stuff for decades. So don't try and do this on your own. Don't try and make a massive sort of sacrifice out of your existing lifestyle. Work towards achieving these different things in very practical, hands-on ways. I'm going to be really difficult and just end with one thing. I'm not going back into how many children you should have, because that could be tricky. But I'm going to end on what might be a controversial point, which relates to how people invest their money. And it's a considerable source of surprise to me whenever I'm talking to people who are lucky enough to have pensions or ISAs or investments of some kind or another. They've got to that point in their life where they've been able to save for a bit. I'm not talking about mountains of money, I'm not talking about the billionaire's kind of stash, but they've got money. And when you ask them, are you certain that your money is invested by your pension provider, by your ISA provider, by your whoever else, insurance company, are you certain that those investments are working towards making the world a better place? Or do you think there's a possibility that they might still be invested, for instance, in those scumbag oil companies? Putting it bluntly. I'm hoping that everyone in an audience like this would be able to say, I know that my pension is not invested in any scumbag oil company. Thank you, Jonathan. You don't have to make it quite as personal and aggressive as that. But nonetheless, I feel comfortable that my investments are working to help the world rather than undermine it. Check up on that one. That's harder. You do have to do a bit of work on that. But again, they're a brilliant source of advice as to what you can do to make sure your pension is working for the planet, for future generations, rather than undermining the prospects for life on Earth.
If I may, one of the questions was, what is the plan for Transition Cleeve? As a member of Transition Cleeve, we are a very small group of very passionate people, and the plan is for as many people to join us and to give whatever resource they have, be that time, knowledge, or anything else, have, a couple of years ago, we did do a consultation in the community, and some things were highlighted, particularly the cycle path from Cleeve to Cheltenham, and we, obviously COVID happened and therefore things have slowed down, but we are looking for people to come forward to give whatever they can, whether that's a few hours or anything longer. So the plan is to feed into the parish plan and to the wider county plan. So we have got an expression of interest form, so for those of you who aren't already part of our membership, please do join.
Would I like another question? Absolutely. Why, are you thinking of getting rid of me, Jerry? No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm quite happy.
So
Go for it.
So some Anonymous has asked, but what about China? How do we help them abandon coal?
Okay, so now we're getting into some of the tricky territory. I'm not going to say there's a chapter on that in the book, but I had to rewrite completely the chapter on China, by the way, because China is such a difficult issue to deal with. And I find it personally very complicated from a moral point of view, trying to get my head around China. At one level, it's a country that I absolutely abhor. I despise the Chinese Communist government. I abominate what they're doing in terms of suppressing people's human rights across the whole of China, by the way, not just in Tibet and in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs. The suppression of human rights is universal across 1.3 billion people, including now the increasingly sophisticated ways of using social media to drive levels of compliance in daily behavior, the like of which the world has never seen before. So one bit of me just hates what is happening in China. And then another bit of me looks at what China is doing to begin to respond to the climate crisis. And please don't think China is ignorant about the climate crisis. It absolutely isn't. The scientists in China are as good as scientists anywhere in the world. Most politicians in China, even though they may be distinctly illiberal, are scientifically literate and often engineers, unlike most of our politicians, who are predominantly scientific illiterates. It does make a difference when you have a country where science is recognized and valued by those who have to take decisions on the behalf of their population. And China has done astonishing things to address the climate emergency. We are only able today to talk about the renewables revolution, and it is a complete revolution, by the way, total revolution in the way we get electricity from solar and wind in particular, but also from hydro and bio and so on. We can only talk about that because of what the Chinese did. Starting 15 years ago, when they began to invest government money, invest in their solar industry. And they just punted billions of dollars into their solar industry to create a world-class industry. And the reason why the costs of solar have fallen by 90%, 90%, in the last 15 years, is because the Chinese made that possible. Solar power and wind power now provide the world with the foundation for renewable electricity. Most people don't know this, but here in the UK, we already get 42% of our electricity from renewables. By the end of next year, we will get 55% of our electricity from renewables. And blow me down, Boris Johnson is going for this because he thinks that we could arrive at a completely decarbonized grid system by 2035. And he's right. In fact, think about that war footing story. If the world went onto a war footing, the first thing we do would be to say every single electron generated in every single country, anywhere in the world, to provide people with the energy services they need, must come from renewables. Technologically speaking, we can do that right now. Financially speaking, we can do that right now. Will people have to pay more for their electricity? No. Will poor people in the rest of the world end up on the receiving end and even poorer than they are now? No, they will not. In fact, in many parts of India, they're already paying less for their solar power than they're paying for the grid-delivered coal-fired power. This is a genuine revolution. This is a straight-up revolution. We would have got there eventually. Let's be honest. These technologies, they move at different speeds, different pace. But China made that happen. And China now is the biggest single investor in renewable electricity of any country in the world. It invested more in renewables in 2019. 2020 was a bit of an odd year, obviously for COVID reasons. China invested more in renewables than the whole of the rest of the world put together. So it's not that they don't understand the nature of this crisis. They sure as hell do, but they've got 1.3 billion people, with an economy still growing by 7 to 8%, with massive wastefulness built in. It's calculated that roughly 20% of the new buildings in China over the last 10 years are empty. Ghost buildings, essentially commissioned by the government to create jobs for people moving into those cities. So they've got this huge problem on their hands, but they are serious about trying to decarbonize. All you'll ever hear in Glasgow, by the way, in the next 10 days is, why should we bother if China isn't going to do what it needs to do? It's the kind of thing Nigel Lawson says. Please don't listen too much to that. It's a massive problem, and we do have to find ways of working with big countries like China and India and Indonesia and Brazil. Please don't think we can sort it out on our own. We have to make it work with them as well. So we'll need to do more on that front. Yeah, what else can I say about the Chinese and what they're doing? It's